Aijaz Ahmed's book In Theory, Classes, Nations and Literature. इसका चैप्टर नंबर 1 है लिटरेरी थ्योरी एंड थर्ड वर्ल्ड लिटरेचर, जिसको आज की वीडियो में मैं समराइज करूँगी. फर्स्ट चैप्टर फर्स्ट ऐसे लिटरेरी थ्योरी एंड थर्ड वर्ल्ड लिटरेचर. In his essay, Aijaz Ahmed strongly criticized the term third world literature. He believes this term creates many political and ideological problems. Ahmed argues that calling the literature from Asia, Africa, and Latin America third world and put all these different cultures and histories into a one single group. This is unfair because each country and region has its own unique traditions, languages, and histories. For example, Indian literature is very different from Nigerian or Mexican literature, that they all get grouped under the one label. Ahmed also points out that this label is often used in Western countries. For Western readers, it makes Western scholars feel like they are being open-minded or progressive by reading third world works, but they still treat these works as something exotic or strange. It reinforces the idea that the West is normal and advanced while the third world is different and behind. This kind of thinking continues old colonial attitudes. He also criticized the way some Western scholars use complex theories to study third world literature. For example, Frederick Jameson once said all third world literature is about national struggle and should be read as national allegory. Ahmed disagrees with this, says it oversimplifies the literature and ignores the artistic and political diversity. In his important essay, Aijaz Ahmed questions the idea of third world literature. He says that the term is not only confusing but also harmful because it comes from a Western way of thinking about the world. Ahmed's main argument is that calling the literature from Asia, Africa, and Latin America third world groups many different cultures and histories into one singular category. This makes it seem like all these countries and the writers are the same, which is not true. For example, a literature from India, Egypt, and Brazil is very different. Each country has its own language, religion, political history, and literary style. Yet when people use the term third world literature, they ignore all these differences. Ahmed believes this is unfair and shows a lack of respect for the uniqueness of each writer and culture. Ahmed also says that this label is created mostly by scholars in the West, the US, the Europe, for Western audience. Many Western universities teach third world literature as if it is one unified group, often focusing on poverty, war, or colonialism. Ahmed argues that this creates a kind of literary tourism, where Western readers consume stories of suffering without truly understanding the culture or the writer's message. It turns deep, meaningful literature into something exotic or political. Not all non-Western writers are writing only about colonialism or national freedom. Ahmed believes that literature should be studied in its own context. Instead of putting all non-Western writers into a one category, readers should look at the history, language, and politics of the country the writer is from. This allows for a more honest and respectful way of understanding global literature. I agree with Ahmed's views. The term third world literature hides more than it explains. It's better to study each work with respect for its background and culture, instead of putting them all into a one big box created by outsiders. The term third world literature is too broad and often used without care. It puts writers into a box made by the West, and it does not help readers truly understand their work. We should treat each writer as an individual and study them work in an proper cultural historical setting. Every country has its own rich culture, history, and struggles. So, grouping so many different writers under one title averages them uniqueness. For example, a novel written in India during the 1940s might talk about freedom from past British rule, while a novel from Argentina written in 1980s might focus on life under military dictatorship. These are very different stories, yet both might be called third world literature, which seems overly simplistic. I believe we should respect all writers and individuals and study their work in the context of their own culture and language and time period. Literature is about expression, imagination, and identity. It should not be boxed into a category just because of where the author comes from.